Let me read some selected verses from the book of Proverbs. The ways of Lady Wisdom are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold her fast will be blessed. By wisdom, the Lord laid the earth's foundations. By understanding, he set the heavens in place. By his knowledge, the watery depths were divided, and the clouds let drop the dew. Whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry out and not be answered. I walk in the way of righteousness, along the paths of justice. The righteous care about justice for the poor, but the wicked have no such concern. The summer is coming to an end. Sorry, the summer is coming to an end, and I know that for those of you who, like me, have children at home, that means that the return to school is getting close. We have about a week and a half at our house until we go back at it. In our family, what that means is that we are looking forward to a return to our bedtime routines, aren't we? Yes. Yes, my children love it. You can tell right there in the second row that they're thrilled. What that normally means for them is that they get to start to go to bed earlier over the next 10 days, and they do not really love it. I'm just, no. I was thinking about that, though, this past week, and it reminded me of an old comic strip called Calvin and Hobbes. I know I'm dating myself there, but yeah, Calvin and Hobbes, fantastic. Calvin is a little 6-year-old kid. He's kind of a belligerent kid. My mom always hated Calvin. He's not a good kid. But he's in one strip, he's talking about his own bedtime with his dad. And he looks up at his dad. You know, he's belligerent, but he's kind of endearing too. He's an endearingly belligerent kid. Looks up at his dad and he says, Dad, why can't I stay up late? It's not fair. And his dad looks back at him and calmly gives the same response that millions of parents have given to their kids over the years. You know, Calvin, the world isn't fair. And Calvin walks off with a grimace on his face and he says, I know, but why isn't it ever unfair in my favor? And I like that, partly because it's funny, but also because it's painfully accurate. Right? Why isn't the world ever unfair in my favor? To a 6-year-old kid, anytime they don't get their own way, it's not fair, right? But in grown-up world, that's true too. That all of us have a very keen sense of injustice, especially when it comes to us, especially when it comes to our situations and when we've been wronged. Why isn't stuff ever unfair in my favor? We're all well aware of the times we've been mistreated, right? You can think of a time when you've been hurt, can't you? You can think of a time when you've been ripped off. We're all aware of things like that. What's really interesting to me, though, is that not only do we as human beings have a keen sense of injustice for ourselves on our own behalf, but we also, if you have even a smidgen of care or love or empathy or compassion in your heart, we also have a sense of injustice for other people, too. For other people outside of ourselves in other situations. Maybe your neighbors or your friends like Scott did this morning, right? Or for people who sometimes, even for people who we never met or never will meet. There are times when you're sitting there on your phone and you're reading a news story or you're watching a news clip or you're seeing something on social media on your phone about a situation that's happening to someone who is hundreds of miles away from you, maybe even thousands of miles away from you, that you've never met and you never will meet, and yet you're sitting there on your couch grimacing in outrage on that person's behalf. You know what I'm talking about? We all have this sense of injustice in the back of our mind all the time, and we hope that things will be made right for them. It's true individually for us. It's true on a national scale. Think about this. I think all of us have grown up in a time where the first thing that we did in elementary school each morning is what? We stand up beside our desk and we put our hand over our heart and we say, what? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. And what's my pledge? What's my dream? What's my hope? One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We wish for that on a national level even. And our country obviously has not been perfect at implementing that, right? Just like we as individuals have not been perfect at it, but it's definitely something that everybody longs for and everybody wishes for, which is interesting. And here's why it's interesting to me. It's interesting because even people who don't believe in God still have this keen sense of justice and injustice inside of them somewhere. And when you think about it, their worldview shouldn't allow for that. A person who doesn't believing that there's a God, their worldview shouldn't allow for that, because a person who doesn't believe in God, material is all there is. All the atoms that we're made of, right? And the chemicals that make up, the thoughts in our brain and all the stuff, that's all there is. If you don't believe in a God, that's all that exists. And so, life is just an accident. It's just a random kind of a thing. And if that's true, if you're an atheist who believes that, then might makes right. And so whoever's the biggest, whoever's the strongest, whoever's the quickest, whoever's the smartest and craftiest, whatever they can get away with, they can do whatever they want. You know why? Because it doesn't matter. You're going to die, and they're going to die. And when you're both dead, everything's kaput, everything's over. There's nothing else after that. And it doesn't mean anything. And so everybody who believes in something like justice, from that perspective, deserves to be laughed at for thinking that a thing like that exists. But if you go up to that same person, that same atheist who doesn't believe in God, and just walk up to them out of the blue and punch them in the nose, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? They aren't going to stop and reflect and say, wow, you're really strong and fast and quick, and look at these chemicals falling out of my nose. What are they going to do? First, they're going to swing back at you, and then they're going to say to you, what you just did is wrong. You shouldn't have done that. You didn't, that wasn't fair. You need to make this right. Even people who don't believe in God have a sense of justice and injustice inside of us. And I don't know how much time you've ever spent thinking about where that comes from, that sense that we have inside of us. An atheist has it, even though he can't account for it. But the Christian story, the Christian worldview, says that we have it because it comes from God. It's part of his character. Justice is. It's a part of who he is on the inside. It's a part of, he is just, he's fair, he's a right kind of God. And, the Christian story says, because we're made in his image, because we're made like him, we have that same sense inside of us, this sense of justice. But not only that, the Christian story also says that this sense of justice we have in us has been activated because the world is not as it was meant to be. That's why we have this sense of injustice inside us. The world was created, our story goes, by God, and that he created it perfectly. He created it in a way that it was whole, and it was at peace, and it was at harmony, and it was blessed. And Proverbs 3 that I read a couple of minutes ago is talking how Lady Wisdom is present at the founding of the universe. Lady Wisdom was there, Solomon says, when God put all of this universe together, when he laid the foundations, when he put the heavens in place and the oceans and the clouds. And then Solomon says about wisdom, he says, her ways are pleasant ways. This lady who was at creation when God made this harmony, her ways are pleasant ways, and all of her paths are peace. They're peace. That word there in verse 17 of that chapter for peace, all her paths are peace, is a Hebrew word that maybe you've heard before. It's the word shalom. Shalom. And what Solomon is saying is that when God created the world, he created it with an order. He created it with peace. He created it with harmony, and everything was perfectly balanced, and everything was woven together, and everything was living together in peace. Everything was living together interdependently, and there wasn't any chaos. There wasn't any sin. There wasn't any hurt. There wasn't any death. There wasn't any pain or any shame. Everything was healthy and connected. Shalom. And the Christian story also says that sin has taken that interdependentness that we have, that harmony, that peace that the world had, and it has disturbed it. And disturbed is not a strong enough word, right? Sin has come into this interdependent peace that God created originally and has broken it. Is pulling it apart. God created for shalom, but sin has broken it apart. And therefore, because of that, injustice exists all around us, in your family at times, in your neighborhood, in your workplace, and in the world. And we feel that. And we get outraged about it, mad about it, because it's not right. It's not fair, and we wish that it would be. And I can think of all kinds of spheres of life, and you can too, where things are not right. You think about in an environmental sense. Remember the water crisis in Flint, right? Their water got contaminated by the pipes and whatnot. And the worst thing about that was that there were people in Flint who still had good water. And it wasn't fair to those in Flint who were drinking water that was killing them over the years. And we wish for and we yearn for justice. We yearn for justice in a racial sense, because there are people in our world still today who are turned down for loans because of the color of their skin. Or maybe they're passed over at work for a promotion because of the color of their skin. And it's unjust. We think about in terms of things like trafficking, when a kid is stolen out of their bed, or they're stolen out of their car, and they're made to labor for someone as a slave, or they're made to have sex with someone as a slave. And we look at that and we say, this world that we live in is unjust. There's criminal injustice that happens all the time. I have a friend he was a longtime cop, and now he works as the chief investigator for a coroner's office in Ohio. And he was on Facebook last week and talking about a recent case that he's been working on. And he said this, he said, "My heart aches, and it makes me sad for the things we have to see to do this job. It just takes a little bit of my humanity each time I have to walk through this valley." He's talking about investigating murders. And we look at this world and we say, man, there's all this injustice around. I yearn for a place where human beings treat each other better than that, where we don't treat each other so terribly that every time we walk out our front door, it feels like we're losing a piece of ourselves when we look at the world around us. And here's where we come up against the piece that makes this whole thing even harder. And that is the truth that we don't just experience injustice ourselves. We also contribute to it. And I've contributed to it, and you have too. There are lots of times when we recognize instinctively when something isn't fair, when something's unjust, and we look around and we see the evidence of it every day. It's a lot harder to own up to the fact that, man, I've done my part to break up shalom. And I've done my part to break up the harmony and balance that God created. And so when you lie to your neighbor, or you cheat on a test in a couple weeks, or you break a promise, or you take credit for something that you didn't deserve, or you gossip about someone, anytime you do stuff like that, anytime I do stuff like that, you're helping to tear apart this harmony, this shalom that God intended for His creation. A lot of times, it's not even about the things that we've done. Our own sin contributes to this, right? But there have been plenty of times, just as often, that we've contributed in passive ways. Proverbs 21, verse 3, Solomon said, "Whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry out and not be answered." And so maybe there are times when we haven't actively, taken advantage of the poor, but how many times have you seen somebody in need and assumed that somebody else would help? How many times has there been an unjust situation that benefited you? The world was unfair in your favor for once, and yet you didn't speak up about it. How many times have you had the resources that you could share, but you kept it to yourself instead? It's easy for us to want justice for ourselves, but it's easy to overlook our own injustice towards others. And I know, I was thinking about this, and I know it's hard for us to see clearly our own part in how much of a difference this makes. Because a lot of times I feel like I'm just one person, right? The world is a giant place. This creation that God has made is a giant place. It's a giant, right? I'm just one person. It's not like I murdered somebody, right? This sin was in private. This sin was, nobody even knew about it. Paul Koptak, he brilliantly writes about the fabric of our lives and how we're all woven and intertwined together. Here's what he says. He says, the effects of wisdom and folly and our poor choices vibrate throughout the social network the way an entire spider web shakes when just one strand is disturbed. Man, everything foolish that we choose to do and often the good things that we choose not to do contributes to our own part in the disharmony and the chaos that we find in our world. That's bad, isn't it? I don't know, when I'm done with that, thinking about that, I feel, I got guilt, right? I feel bad about it. I feel down about it. That's bad news. There is good news, all right? And I want to share with that with you today and settle on this. Those of us who are followers of God, followers of Christ, passionate followers of Jesus who are in this room and on our live stream today, God created this world with His perfect harmony and shalom, and we have been called by Him to help restore what sin has broken. And that's what justice is. It's seeing what's wrong out there and doing our part to help restore what sin has broken. You remember Lady Wisdom that I mentioned when we were reading? Lady Wisdom is right there when God laid the foundations of the earth. He designed it. He ordered it just so and put it into this harmony. Proverbs teaches us that if we want to be wise, if we want to know how to live skillfully in this order that God has created, and we do, then we're going to be people who are involved in bringing justice. Here's what Proverbs 8 said. Lady Wisdom is talking. She said, Lady Wisdom says, I walk in the way of righteousness along the paths of justice. What does that path look like? Proverbs 29. The righteous care about justice for the poor, among other things. In other words, an important part of being wise means living your life in a particular direction, a particular path, a particular way, a track that is fair and just and right. And it's an active thing. The righteous, Solomon says, care about justice. They care about it. They're involved in doing it. It's an active thing. And so if we want to be passionate followers of Jesus who live in the way that God has intended for us to live, who want to help bring justice and fix what sin has broken to the best of our ability, we are going to live on this path. And fools, Solomon said, the righteous care about justice for the poor, but the wicked have no such concern. The wicked have, no concern. And you know what that means? It means that fools ignore the kind of issues that I'm talking about. Fools ignore injustice when they see it. They turn their heads. They turn a blind eye. In the New Testament, Jesus tells a story. And this story illustrates perfectly what I'm talking about. There's a guy, Jesus says. He's walking down the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. And as he's walking along the road outside of town, these bandits come out of the hills. And they jump on him. They mug him. And they beat him up. And they leave him on the side of the road. Okay? That's the situation. We got a guy who's lying half dead on the side of the road. And Jesus says there's a religious man who comes out of the city, heads down that same road, and he sees this body laying on the side of the road up ahead. He sees the body, he sees the blood, he sees the torn clothes of this guy. Yay, this guy's going to help, right? What does he do? Zigzags over to the other side of the road and keeps on walking. What? You're like, what? Listen to this story from Jesus. It's okay. Here comes another guy. Another religious guy, actually. Comes out down the same road. He sees the guy laying on the side. Does the exact same thing. Fools have no concern for the poor. And that's what those guys were. The religious guys were fools. The reason why they crossed the other side doesn't matter. They may have had good religious reasons for doing it. Jesus doesn't say. But they were fools. They may have thought that they were walking the path of righteousness, but you cannot be walking the path of righteousness when your eyes are blind to the plight of the poor and the oppressed and those who life has treated in an unjust way. If you turn a blind eye, you're a fool, Solomon and Jesus say. What we do know is that because our God is a just God, and as his passionate followers, made in his image, who want to help bring justice to a world that is desperate for that kind of shalom and peace and harmony, we are actively called to show help and assistance to people who are poor, for people who are vulnerable, for people who don't look like us, because justice restores what has been broken. And so wise people do not look away from injustice. Wise people lean in to injustice. And we're going to spend the last few minutes talking about what does that mean. It means that you actively, if you're wise and if you're a person who cares about justice, living in God's image, if you are wise, you are weaving your life into the lives of people who are vulnerable. And you do it with your time, you do it with your money, you do it with your energy, your influence, your love, your actions. Every part of you leans into that. Proverbs 29 verse 4, Solomon is writing in this whole chapter about a whole bunch of different social relationships and ways to be wise in the middle of those. And there are several verses where he talks about kings and rulers, and this is one of them. But the principle of what he says in this verse, I believe, goes beyond just kings. It's applicable to all of us. Proverbs 29:4, Solomon says, by justice, a king gives a country stability. Right? Isn't that a great word? By justice, a king brings a country stability. We know what injustice looks like, don't we? You can look at communities all around the United States. You don't even have to go very far away from Hudsonville and Jenison to see what injustice looks like and the instability that it brings. You can find countries all around the world where injustice reigns. Injustice rules, and there are places that are unstable. There are places where it's not safe to live. There are countries where you are always in danger. But justice, Solomon says, leads to stability. Justice gives you a firm foundation. It leads to a return of shalom to this world that God has made. And so, wise people don't look away from injustice, they lean in. Let me talk a little bit about how they lean in. They lean in financially to injustice. Wise people take their money and they put it where their heart is. They don't put it where their mouth is, right? Talk is cheap. You can say all kinds of things. You can talk big. But wise people take their money and they put it where their heart is. And that describes many of you, and I just want to say thank you today. You may not know this, but in the past 4 or 5 months, there have been 8 new families that have started contributing to the ministry of Jenison Christian Church. And I'm super thankful for that. If you're one of those, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for contributing to what we're doing here at Jenison Christian Church. We celebrate your generosity. And for the rest of us who've been here for a while, you probably already know that over the years, our church has contributed, has committed as a leadership to give 20% of every general fund offering that comes in. 20% of that goes away. It goes to missions in Michigan. It goes to missions all around the world. And we can only do that because of your generosity, because you have contributed financially. And so I want to say thank you. And there are kids today in South Africa and Haiti right now who have done nothing at all in their life to deserve the circumstances that they find themselves in. They just happen to be born into a family in a dirt poor country. And those kids are clothed and they are fed and they are brought out of an unjust situation because of those of you who have put your money where your heart is. To West Michigan, Western Haiti Christian Mission, right? And Hippo Valley Christian Mission in South Africa. Thank you for sharing financially. Thank you for leaning in financially. Several months ago, your church leadership thought of kind of a need that we might have. And so the church leadership stuck a white bucket back in the back of the auditorium. You've probably seen it when you walked in sometimes, and maybe you thought, what in the world is this bucket doing sitting here? Do we have leaks in the ceiling? You know, what's happening, right? That bucket is called the generosity bucket. And the generosity bucket is just a place where any day, Sunday, any day of the week, you can come in, and you can it's a place to drop in a dollar bill, or 5 or 10 or 20, whatever you got in your pocket, just randomly, right? You don't need to plan for it. It's just you had leftover lunch money and just drop a couple bucks in there. And the idea is that if any of you have a friend or neighbor or coworker or somebody that you know in your life who just needs some money for something, it could be for anything. You just let us know, and we will get you the cash to give to them, no strings attached, to let them know that we care about them. Come on up, Lisa. We just had a bundle of cash that went out this past week, and I asked my friend Lisa to share about that.
So about a month ago, can you hear me? Hello? There we go. About a month ago, our neighbor's 11-year-old son collapsed in their backyard. Miracle upon miracles, he is still with us. He had what's called an arterial venous malformation. It's just a bundle of blood vessels that aren't supposed to be there. And I have a great update today. I'm going to try not to cry. He had successful surgery this week. They've been waiting a month for him to be stable enough to have the surgery to remove the blood vessels to see what's left. I was able to walk down the generous gifts that you guys have given to them. Our neighbor, he was speechless. I mean, he looked at me and he said, "Lisa, what now?" They have felt God's love from around this community, and they are just humbled upon humbled upon humbled. So thank you for that. And please continue to pray for Jacob.
Yeah, thank you so much. You keep that microphone. And I just want to say that the same day Lisa came and said, "I have a need in my life, a place that I could share," that same day somebody came up like 10 minutes later and said the same thing. We have another need that one of our church members is willing to help with, but we need some more dollars in the generosity bucket. If that's something that you have in your pocket or your purse today, thank you for giving so that we can help correct injustice in this world financially. Sometimes it's more of a practical sense that wise people lean in to injustice. Every school year, we participate in a couple of different programs with local schools. One of those programs is called Hand to Hand. And Hand to Hand is an organization. We live in the heart of white, middle-class America, right? And you kind of look around at your friends and your neighbors, and everything's fine. They got enough money. They got 2 cars in the driveway and all that. We live in the middle of this, and yet every single weekend, there are kids who are going to go home from school starting in September, and they practically have nothing in their cupboards to eat. They virtually have nothing in their pantry to eat. And so what Hand to Hand does is it partners with local churches and connects churches with schools to correct this injustice. They are committed to righting that wrong. And so every year in partnership with them in September and in January, we come to you and we unashamedly say, "Will you please bring in food? Will you bring in food items that we can put into backpacks and send home with these kids who don't have anything to eat at home on weekends? Can you do that?" And there are some of you in here today who are volunteers who sort and organize and pack and deliver and pray over every single one of those food items that goes out so that every one of those kids can have food justice. Thank you. And I don't know right now, I didn't talk to the leader of that organization. I don't know if we need another person or two to assist with that. But if you want to help with that, if you want to use your time and your effort and your energy to help with Hand to Hand, I'm sure that we can find a place for you. Let me tell you about 2 other particular ways that you can help bring peace and shalom and wholeness and correct another injustice starting today. There are a significant number of kids in our public schools right here in Hudsonville and Jenison who simply do not have enough social support in their lives. They just don't. It's for a bunch of different reasons, and it's not fair. It's not right. These kids break my heart. They break my heart. And there's an organization called Kids Hope USA that works with schools and connects them with churches like ours And Kids Hope connects one loving, caring adult with one elementary age kid so that that kid can get 45 to 60 minutes once a week of uninterrupted, one-on-one FaceTime with an adult who will listen to them and who cares about them. Our Kids Hope school is Pinewood Elementary. It's about a mile that direction. Let me tell you what also breaks my heart. And I have refrained from saying this before, but it's time. I'm not mad at all, I promise. I promise I don't say this to try to make you feel guilty, because guilt is a terrible motivator. I say it out of love and desire for justice for these kids. What also breaks my heart is us. Because every year, there are at least twice as many kids over there who need a mentor as we're able to provide volunteers. Passionate followers of Jesus lean into injustice with their time and their influence. And I want to ask you, will you be one of those? Please. Got that number? Pat Howard is the liaison for our church. She can't be here today, but that's her phone number. And she told me to tell you to call her today or text her today if you are willing to be one of those people who will give 60 minutes a week of FaceTime to a kid, of time and influence to make things more just for them. Will you be one of those people? Take a picture of that number. Memorize it. Call it. Text it. I'm stalling to give you time. I see a lot of people looking at me, but not looking at that number. And I hope you have it in your phone already. And I hope you're ready to make that call. Because I don't want another 6 kids sitting there at Pinewood seeing their classmate go out to come sit with me for an hour. And wish that it could be them. Okay? Here's another way that you can lean into injustice. There's an organization in our town called Love Your Neighbor. They are in our building every Wednesday morning. They mentor adults who have found themselves in a tough spot financially. One of the graduates of that program surprised us last Sunday, and he was sitting in here, came in a minute or two after we started for our worship service. And he's a friend of mine, and this guy he's moved out of the state since he graduated out of that program. But the reason he graduated out of that program is because that program, the life skills that they taught him, enabled him to get a job. It enabled him to learn how to pay rent. It enabled him to learn how to make a budget. It enabled him to learn how to get out of debt. And he's been through a ton in his life. But somebody looked at him and said, I will lean into him. I will lean into his life. I'm going to put myself out there in a place that's a little bit uncomfortable for me and help right something that has gone wrong. You can be a mentor like that. You do not have to be an expert. Love will give you the training. The mentors in that group on Wednesday morning are exactly people like you and people like me. You don't have to be special. You just have to care enough to lean in and love like Jesus. There are a million other ways. You kids, school is coming. And I know that first week of school and going even further through that school year, there are going to be kids who nobody under the age of 18 will talk to them. Well, they won't get one word from a kid under the age of 18. Will you be the one who will include them? There are going to be kids at school who are not only going to be ignored, they're going to be mistreated. Will you defend them? You folks in the marketplace, you women And you men, will you recommend somebody in your workplace who's been unjustly overlooked for a promotion that they deserved? Maybe you got it instead. Maybe somebody else got it, but they deserved it. Will you put in a word for them? You retirees, we got some of those. Would you commit to one visit a week to somebody who's lonely? Nobody deserves to be lonely. Wise people who are passionate followers of Jesus don't look away from injustice. They lean into it. There was a third guy. You know that, right? There's a third guy in that story that Jesus told. And this third guy came down the same road, out of the same town. He saw the same body laying on the side of the road. He saw the blood. He saw the torn clothes. It was ugly. It was unjust. For this third guy, it was inconvenient. It wasn't his plan that day. It was going to take him out of his way. It was going to cost him something. And this third guy leaned in. Anyway, he picks this guy up. He cleanses his wounds. He puts him on his donkey. He takes him to the next hotel up the road. And he tells the guy at the front desk, he says, I'll pay for anything this guy needs to get better. I'll take care of it. And that is exactly what Jesus has done for you. That's what he's done for me. Jesus leaned into this mess that we have made of our lives. He leaned into the disharmony that's in our life and the discord and the ugly. And he said, I'll take all of that upon myself, Jesus said. I'll put up my life for your life because I want to bring you shalom. I want to bring you peace. I want to bring you harmony and wholeness in your life. And Jesus stuck out his arms and died on the cross so that you could be right with God. And he rose from the dead to show us that disharmony and death don't have to be the end. And God sent his Holy Spirit to live in you who are Christ followers, who are passionate followers of Jesus, so that you'd have the power to say, I can and I will do my part to lean into injustice in this world so that I can help bring shalom. Will you do that? Will you do that? I'm going to pray for you that you will. God, there are so many needs that we see all around us. And it is hard for us. We look at it, it feels overwhelming maybe at times. God, I'm just one little person. I can't fix this. God, help us to know and to be assured and to be reminded that we don't have to fix everything, that you're the one who's going to bring final and total justice, but also that we do have a responsibility to do what we can as individuals, as the one person that we are. God, we are committed to being the kinds of people that you want us to be, the kinds of people that you made us to be. God, you made us to have shalom in our own souls and spirits and hearts. God, you want us to bring that shalom to our office, to our factory floor, to our classroom. God, help us, prod us, push us this morning to be that kind of people. God, help us to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, who, just like the third man, went over and did what he could for one person. God, help us to be people who lean in to injustice so that we can do our part to help fix and repair and restore what sin has broken in this world. God, it's such a privilege to be your child and to be enabled and entrusted with this responsibility. And God, this morning we commit that we are going to stand up and take that responsibility. And we're going to stand up and do what we can, do our part. We love you so much. We're thankful that you have done that for us and brought justice for us when we did not deserve it. Thank you for Jesus and his sacrifice and his resurrection that gives us hope and peace and shalom in our hearts today. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.